the whole purpose of today is to kind of focus on what I've been doing the last 5 years, basically. This statement here really encapsulates what I found I personally wanted for myself, going back when I first got the idea in 2016, and then what I've found a lot of other people want as well. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm here, speaking with you all today, is that a lot of us want this as well. It's like we want more leverage. We want to be able to put our hours and our time into something that's more packageable and productizable that allows us to monetize it in ways that are not just tied to salary or hourly rate, no matter how high the hourly rate is, right? Even if it's a high hourly, we're still capped by time. And so productizing what we can do is really important. And, the whole goal is to keep growing and diversifying our income, right, as our career goes. And so, if it's just replacing just what we could do in the job market, it's not necessarily a win. And the parentheses for me is really key because without burning out, like for me, this was about a second chapter in my career, right? After some big wins in a traditional job role and co-founding role. But I wanted something that was going to give me more time with my family and something that wasn't just going to be like creating my own job, right? I wanted something with some more leverage than just having a job. So and then the last statement of even if you hate self-promotion, like for me, I'm an engineer by trade. Like my background is like writing code originally. And so, I don't like that promoting myself typically. Like I come from the background of just like letting the code kind of do the talking. But the fact is when you get to go down this path, you have to really get comfortable with uh, not necessarily self-promotion as maybe you think of it traditionally, but marketing and thinking of yourself and your product and your expertise as something that could be marketable, and it isn't just pure self-promotion. So we're going to talk more about how to actually do this, but I want to just kind of intro with what this statement means to me, because you may recognize some of these things and maybe what you're wanting to do and like why you're here today to even listen to this. So
Todd, with
yeah,
that thought, did you want to also introduce yourself a little bit more as far as
yes,
like,
I've got. So here we go. This I want to kind of share. Thank you for that prompt, Kim. A little bit about me, like who am I? The background here is my family, and this is a big part of my why, right? And my daughter in the middle there is a big part of kind of what sent me down this path in the first place is her birth. So we'll get into more of that. But essentially, my path is like I'm from small town Nebraska. I worked in Chicago for Groupon during the IPO as a platform engineer. Then I went to the West Coast and spent time in Portland and San Francisco. Now I'm based in Bentonville, which if you're not familiar with Bentonville, Arkansas, um, Walmart World Headquarters is here, and there's a huge ecosystem of all the Fortune companies that work in and around Walmart. And so there's a really interesting startup culture, corporate culture here on the edge of the Ozarks. And when I was on the West Coast, I was working for Digit. I was the founding engineer there. We ended up exiting to Opportune in 2021, and I've been a fractional CTO since 2020. Um, and I originally founded Tech Leaders, which is what I've been focused on for the last several years in 2022. And I would love to connect with you all. If you want to send me a connection request, feel free to scan this or search for me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect after this session if you got follow-up questions or anything along those lines. So feel free to send me a connection request. So today, though, what we're going to actually go over is the simplest distillation of what I've spent the last 5 years learning myself, teaching others, and just refining. And it's a three-step how-to. That's kind of the simplest form I've been able to get it down to. There's things to unpack within each of those steps, but today we're going to talk about those three steps so that you can start doing this for yourself. And maybe, I would love to kind of know where people are at, and we'll look at the spectrum here in a second. But, why are you here today? What are you trying to get out of today? I think it's helpful to frame the rest of the session around why are you here? My why, was my family. When my daughter was born, I wanted to be able to spend more time with her. And so that planted the seed of how I could productize myself and become a fractional CTO, but it took me a few years to get there. But ultimately, my why was to have more options to make more impact, to make more income, and have more influence. Over the years, I've used fractionalizing myself and selling my expertise as a way to fund product ideas, right? So there's a lot of benefits to this. You can use it to just be your main cash flow, but you can also use it to bootstrap and fund other ideas. And so there's a lot of benefit to being independent. We're going to talk about those steps here in a sec. But for me, it's all about optionality to have these big three things. And that was my why when I started down this path. When I got started in fall 2020, I had no idea how to get clients though, without just like using my network and depending on referrals. And so I recognized like if I was going to use this as the next chapter in my career, I needed to have a more durable system to get clients and to win business than to just depend on referrals. And so I actually set a goal to say, I'm going to not use referrals at all. And I'm going to purely build up a cold pipeline and make solve that problem because I recognized even if it took me longer, if I solved that problem, it was going to set me up for as long as I wanted to do this. And so, here it is 5 years later, and it's working very well. And so that was kind of where I was at when I was coming into this. So I'd love to know, like, where are you? Like, we've got a variety of people here today. I'd love to know, like, where are you in this journey of, productizing yourself, maybe being a fractional CTO? Are you curious? You're here just to learn more because it's something that's interesting to you, or you're working on it. Maybe you're already independent, or like you're already booked and busy. I love to know where everyone's at. Okay, I am looking at the chat just so I can at least see. Awesome. We've got a good range of folks.
A lot of curious and works in progress.
Excellent. So this is going to really be helpful for you today then. No
Yeah.
matter where you're at, unless you're already booked and busy, you probably don't need what we're going to talk about today. But short of that, this is going to be very useful.
We do have some interesting comments. Jeremy Gluckman said, I like to hedge my risk and diversify sources of income and to iterate towards productizing my expertise. So seems like Jeremy's working on it, it's made some progress, and is more so um, wanting to make a little bit more, put more substance in it.
Awesome. That's great. We'll talk more about some of the ways that you can productize here today. Thanks for sharing, Jeremy. Tried once. Yeah. That's a story I've heard a lot where people have maybe tried to go independent and do consulting and maybe it didn't go quite as planned. And so I meet a lot of folks who are like kind of a little bit kind of gun shy now, where maybe they're hesitant to go down that path again. So that's super common.
Yeah, Arvita has some interesting comments as well. Arvita's been working on it. It's been advising clients through an accelerators, mainly equity, not cash flowing yet. So maybe there's some things that you can comment about that.
Yes. Also very common. It's great to get the equity again, like I talked about optionality. I think of this model as a way to almost do what investors do, which is to place lots of bets, right? So you can get some equity in multiple companies, which is awesome. But I always recommend trying to get the cash flow to go along with it, right? So it's a cash and equity comp. And so, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. That's a super common situation though. And so just know like that's where a lot of people start, and that's a great place to start from. There's a lot to work with there.
Has anybody actually been able to monetize a bit some of their consulting and advisory work? We have one person, a couple people. Steve's done it. And forgive me if I don't pronounce your name right. Zay, ZHE has done it.
Yeah, sounds it's true.
Hmm.
I think the
Awesome.
question I had that maybe you'll cover in the future is at what stage you cut over, decide to say I want to be fully independent because having full-time job and finding client doing BD, BD itself is a full-time job.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And that was a big problem that I had to figure out how to solve because I didn't really want to spend much time on the BD side of things. And so today we're going to talk about, actually, I've got a link to a playbook that you can use to start this for yourself. But like the next level is to actually have a team do it for you. And so we use virtual assistants in the Philippines, and that's actually a service that we offer through tech leaders where we can actually do that for you. But it all starts with like understanding how to do it. And when you have a playbook and a checklist, it makes it a lot faster so that you don't have to spend as much time on it. But it is something that has to be done consistently. It's the drum that you have to beat on a daily basis, even if it's only for 30 minutes or less. So we'll get into more of the details here in a minute. Thanks for the
Joe,
question. Yeah.
Joe's got some interesting comments. Seems like he's got a framework that he has been able to implement for 70% equity, 30% cash.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, whatever the split is right for you, I think there's so many variables, right? The stage of the company, your belief and conviction in where they're going. For me, I'm always looking at, the founder themselves and like how much conviction do I really think of it almost like an investor would, right? You're betting on if you're taking a significant amount of equity, you're betting on is, the founder and the founding team and the CEO going to be able to raise the next round and get, profitable and actually get the growth that is going to be worth the ROI, right? So you really want to be putting that investor hat on the more split is in equity. But that's great that you're getting the cash along with it. Just something to consider if you haven't already.
Jeremy Gluckman has an interesting comment about monetization. Not uh, yes, they've monetized events and moderation experiences, but not advisory work yet. And then we
Mhm.
have a Solana who is talking about being able to monetize for input as a expert for market research. So it's a couple of different sources. I'm curious where you might consider that when it comes to advisory and consulting work.
Yeah, I think there are the different like expert platforms that you can get access to, and then sometimes you just get the cold outreach. I think that's a great way to kind of get your feet wet, but you're always going to be dependent on them for deal flow, right? So you don't really control your pipeline, and there's obviously limited compensation, right? They're taking their cut, and so there's certain constraints, but it's a great place to start, and it can be a supplement. You just wouldn't want that to be your main path unless you just want to be able to make some nice side cash, and that's totally fine too. The question of like transitioning to independent, we recommend people basically create a parallel stream from the side income that it meets or gets to a comfortable point of matching your primary income, right? And for every person, that's going to be different, right? Their own personal runway is always going to be different. But we've helped multiple people and tech leaders basically replace their primary income for a long enough period of time they felt comfortable to leave the W-2. And that's how we recommend it. We don't recommend any, just going all in, burning the boats. There are a lot of people, though, that found themselves between roles and decided, you know what, I'm going all in on this. And that's great. But if you're in a stable role right now, we don't recommend just going all in unless you've got the runway that would make that make sense. Yeah, that's a great question. I think let's proceed, and then I think we can open up to more general purpose questions as we go along because some of this may get answered and it will, I think, frame the questioning even better. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and go into the next one. Oh, there we go. Next slide here. So when I got into this, I was like overwhelmed by all the marketing options. And this is like this is like a fraction of what's actually out there. But as a non-professional marketer, I was like, what should I do for the stage that I'm at? And I thought back to my time at Digit, when we were early stage, and that helped. But there's, marketing tactics and strategies are constantly changing. It's always evolving. And so it's hard to know like what works now and what works best for the stage that you're at. And it was just kind of overwhelming at first, to be honest. And so I actually joined a program called Traffic and Funnels. And I don't know if anyone's heard of this. They're not around anymore. They went out of business. But it was essentially how to learn how to drive traffic and set up a funnel to be able to monetize your expertise. It was very general purpose. And to be honest, their strength was their own sales and marketing, not their delivery. Because I found like it was extremely general and it helped get a little bit of momentum, but it wasn't very helpful for selling really technical expertise. And I know there's a mix of people and skill sets on the call today, but I believe like if you work in tech in any capacity, you are a tech leader and you sell technical expertise, whether you write code or not. If you're a product person, if you're an ops person, if you're a finance person, right? Finance is a deeply technical topic. Um, it's not writing code, but it's technical. And so, um, all that to say is I found this program, I invested more money than I wish I had in this program to try to learn this stuff. But because I was so new to marketing, I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so, I won't say I didn't learn from it, but it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to learn from it. And so this is where I learned like selling expertise is different, right? Technical expertise is different from just a lot of the general marketing stuff that we see out there. And so when I had this realization, I was like, okay, I need to go find like the real experts. And I'm a proponent of coaching and finding like the best people to learn from. I've always followed that in my career, like find the best people in the room and then learn as much as I can from them. And so what I did is I found you may recognize some of these people or none of these people, but what I found was, Alex Hormozy on the right, his wife Layla Hormozy. I don't know if anyone is familiar with them. They're pretty big in the marketing space and, kind of the guru kind of cringe. There's an element of cringe to it for to be sure, but there's no doubt about the fact that they're great marketers. And so I wanted to find who is the guy behind them. Who did Alex Hormozy learn from? And yeah, cringe does really well on LinkedIn. True, so true. And I found Taki Moore. So that's the guy that I used Google's Nano Banana to Photoshop him in there. If you haven't used Nano Banana, it's like Photoshop on steroids. I just put two photos of people and I said, put him behind them. And this is what it gave me. So anyway, Taki Moore was the guy behind them. And basically, he's the coach and advisor for Alex Hormozy and a lot of other people like Dan Martell. If you know Dan Martell, he's pretty big in the tech space. So I went to like the godfather of like how to do this. And I was like, I just want to learn from the best so I can try to apply this to what we do. And so they helped me with so many things. They helped me with where to find ideal clients. Like that's kind of the number one question that we have is like, okay, well, how do I actually get these projects, right? Um, what to sell and how do I package it? Like when we come from the job market, we're used to selling ourself as a resource. And it's a totally different approach when it comes to independent consulting, right? You need to be solving problems and packaging as a solution, not as a resource that has a given bandwidth of time that you're trading for a salary. So it's a bit of a mental shift. And then the last thing is like what to say and how to sell it, right? Is like the actual messaging of it all. This was a huge thing. I was like, I knew I could help people, but I was like, well, how do I actually do that in practical terms? So we're going to look at this. And then the last thing was like how to actually grow without sacrificing like quality of life, but also quality of what I do. And so it's complex, right? You want to grow and scale, but like loss of quality is a concern, right? You're like, well, if I have a team helping me, will the quality go down? If I work all the time to serve all the clients that I want to grow the income that I want, will my quality of life go down? So these are like big questions that if we don't address this, we've just created like another burnout driven job for ourselves, even though we're in charge of it. So the goal is to avoid that. And so that ultimately working with Taki Moore and his program led me to starting Tech Leaders. And we've been really focused on just helping people get promoted and promote themselves, essentially, is kind of the gist of what we do. And so if you want to start doing this for yourself, there are a few things you need. So you might be thinking like, okay, great story, Todd, but like, what do I need to actually do this? The first thing is you just need a track record of results. And I would bet that everyone on here has an impressive track record of results. It's how and why you're in Sidebar and why you're at this point in your career. So it simply starts with that's the first thing you need. The second thing is a willingness to put yourself out there. This doesn't necessarily mean skilled at putting yourself out there yet. Like that's something that we work on, but you have to be willing to do it. Like I've tried to help people that simply would not put themselves out there for various reasons. And my co-founder of Tech Leaders, actually, his name's Steven. He's an amazing person when it comes to what he calls mental fitness. And this, a lot of this comes down to like beating imposter syndrome, beating procrastination, all kinds of things. He's a wizard with this stuff. And he's actually been like one of my secret weapons personally as I've been doing this over the years. And so he works with people a lot to fix the comfort around putting yourself out there, right? We can work with that, but you have to be willing to put yourself out there. So that's the main thing is willingness to put yourself out there. There's lots of ways to make putting yourself out there easier, faster, and something that actually feels good, but you got to be willing. And the third thing is to actually be willing to listen to wants versus needs. This is a huge thing that I see a lot of people that are trying to force something that they want to sell because they know they need it. And that may be true. But if you don't sell and address what they also want up front, you'll never be able to give them what they need. And so this was like a huge lesson for me over the years. And I still have to kind of come back to this principle is how can you package up what they need into what they want? And so we'll talk a little bit more about how to actually do that. But I just want to like plant the seed of that being very important. So my first win when I went through this process was like getting my first client in 6 weeks. And I did this actually through Facebook. So I just want to call out like I'm going to talk a lot about like LinkedIn, or at least a little bit about LinkedIn. That's what mostly what we use nowadays. But like this works. It's such a evergreen system and sort of abstract system. It works on any social network. So I've gotten clients through X or Twitter, through Facebook, through LinkedIn. Nothing through Instagram yet, nothing through YouTube yet, but those channels serve as, great content that helps with conversion. So this works on any channel, but I just want to call out Facebook is actually a really hidden gem that a lot of people overlook. There's a lot of targeted Facebook groups. I got my first VC client on Facebook, right? And a lot of people overlook that. And so when you talk about business and things you can do for them, it really stands out. Whereas on LinkedIn, it's all, cringy, fake business posts a lot of the time. So it's all about standing out. So the fastest win that this system and kind of process has led to is someone getting a client in 6 days. So like basically speed running the process and getting their first product in 6 days. And then the latest win, and this is something I'm proud of and really excited about right now, is we've started an entirely new product and offer, and we've gotten it from zero, like idea to 54,000 in 93 days. And so we're now hitting the gas on that because I'm very excited because I feel more pull from it than ever in anything that we've sold. And there's a sense of urgency in the market around this. So that's kind of, I just wanted to give you examples of kind of what's possible and show this isn't something, I'm not just showing tricks that worked 5 years ago. Like this is something that like we follow the same playbook and we've got a new product that is really starting to win. So we're going to go through, yeah, Kim.
One thing I wanted to just kind of double click on, Todd, in the last slide that I thought was just really reiterating the point that you talked about in the previous one was know your numbers or know your impact, right?
Yeah.
This is a real life example of this is the impact. These are the numbers, your first win, the fastest win, latest win in dollars. And it's just knowing the quant and the qual of what can be done as far as like outcomes driven approach to value creation.
Great call out. You're totally right. And we're going to actually look at how to create your offer model. And the very middle of that is focused on the outcome. What's the quantitative and qualitative way of demonstrating what it is you do? So I'm glad you called that out because we're going to look at that here even more in a minute. Cool. Okay. So what I want to talk about now is what we call the define, align, refine client getting system. So it's a 3-step process, like I mentioned, and it's iterative, right? It's cyclical. So this isn't it's not a process that's like a pipeline that you run through and stop. This is something I'm constantly running these three steps on everything we do internally to tech leaders in the companies that we like work with and that I'm consulting with, and then all the people that are in the tech leaders program that are doing fractional work that we help. So the first step is about defining your ICP, your ideal client profile. So if you know, this is really about who it is you're selling, and I think a lot of people start with demographics, and that is an important place to start. But another dimension that a lot of people miss is the psychographics. Like, what are the fears, the pains, the gains of the actual decision maker, not just the demographics of the company, right? Not just the industry, not just the geographic location. So it's important to go deeper than just those demographics, but actually start to document those psychographics. So the main problem around ICP is just like, where the heck to find ideal clients? Like, where do we find these people? What makes them ideal? Um, how do I find them consistently? And I would say like the number one mistake that people make, and I made this, I know it well because I've made it, and I have to catch myself to say, how do we not boil the ocean here? You cannot, if you try to help anyone, you'll end up helping no one. So you really have to get focused, even if it's true, which I know a lot of the things I do is true, and a lot of the things you probably do is true, that you can help literally anyone, any industry, there's so much flexibility. But if you do that, you will end up just only relying on referrals, right? And you're never going to be able to find your niche and stand out explicitly. So you'll always be dependent on inbound referrals. And there's lots of great businesses that are built on inbound referrals, but personally for me, I wanted something more durable than that because referrals are notoriously fickle when it comes to like market cycles. And there's a lot of up and down and feast and famine with referral-based businesses. So my goal is to not rely on that. So the way to solve this is one of the tools that we have in the framework is called the ICP targeter. And it starts with focusing on a horizontal niche. And this is really important to think about because, and to understand this, because a lot of people focus on a vertical niche and they say, I'm going to help this industry. I work with fintech companies, or I am a product person that, works in health tech, whatever the industry is. They usually think, or I work in Series A companies specifically. I help Series A companies do X. So you think in a very specific vertical niche. The key is to do a horizontal niche on a problem, meaning you articulate the set of problems that you solve. There's going to be lots of different pockets of the market that have those problems. So it allows you to focus your marketing on the problem and the solution rather than trying to be overly specific on a particular industry. This is what people mostly get wrong around focusing on a niche. So they say, I can help everyone across industries, but they don't have the horizontal focus on the problem. So the key here is to like think about what problems do you solve, and all your marketing hinges on that. Okay, let's go to the next one here. Okay. And this is also going to help you find now buyer leads, right? So if you're familiar with, let's say 100% of the market, in general, 3% of the market is ready to buy from you now. And so this system is going to help you find those now buyers, those leads. And then it's also going to help you grow your network for later leads and following up and nurturing. And I'd say like this is still to this day my biggest weakness, and this is why I've actually hired it out because I still am weak at it, is the follow-up. The follow-up with folks for later. They say the fortune is in the follow-up, and it's so true. And I have to like wake up and remind myself of that every day. A lot of people just kind of focus on new leads, new leads. How do I get more leads? But should be thinking about how do I also follow up with the people that are already in my network, the people that are already that I've already spoken to on some sort of cadence that makes sense, that isn't annoying but helpful. So the second step of the process is align your messaging. So once you understand your horizontal niche for your ideal client profile, it makes it a lot easier to make your messaging reflect that, right? Your profile can be optimized and your content can reflect that. So this is all about the messaging problem of like what to say and how to actually sell it is what it is you do. And I would say the two big messaging mistakes are people just underselling themselves, meaning there's been folks that like came through the tech leaders program where I like discovered some role that they had earlier, whether they were just totally downplaying it or some outcome that they had led in their organization that I found out like way too late, like let's say 2 months after meeting the person. And I'm like, what? You did what? Why are you not promoting that? Why are you not talking about that? That's incredibly impressive. That's rare. And so when we're so close to what we do, we often take it for granted, right? And that's why it can be so helpful to have probably why a big part of why you're in Sidebar, right? A group of people that we could bounce ideas off, right? And to have the perspective to see, wow, that's actually something I was kind of overlooking. That's more needed or more unique or valuable than maybe I was thinking. So this is a huge thing that we see is people just underselling themselves, under promoting themselves. Even people that are already arguably doing well, there's often like so much gold that they're just like overlooking because they're so close to it. So, that might be something that you could do in one of your circles even, or to do, find a partner to do this is like, how could you do a reflection session on your career and background to try to mine out that gold and just inventory all the things you've done. I bet there's things you've forgotten, and that is like really useful stuff to put out there.
Todd, Katrina
Yeah.
has asked, just to go back a little bit, could you provide an example of providing a service as a horizontal niche on problems?
Yeah. So for example, with what I do as a fractional CTO, which I actually don't really market myself anymore at this, I still take some opportunities here and there. So my whole focus is basically helping non-technical founders that are repeat entrepreneurs, right? So not first-time founders, go from 0 to 1 and hit their first fundraising milestone. And so that's something that works across industry. I've worked with B2B, I've worked with B2C. I started in fintech with Digit, but now I've moved into all these other verticals and different industries that I never would have been able to touch. And you get to see similarities across that. And then that's part of the fun of consulting is that you actually roll all that into your playbook and you become even more valuable yourself as you learn these patterns. Like most people work with, let's say nowadays maybe a dozen companies in their career. I've worked with, I think the count is 31 since 2025. So, you could argue I've worked with like 3 careers worth of companies in 5 years. That compounds my learning, compounds the value I can bring to the company so much faster. Um, Katrina, awesome. A great question. And you could think of similar terms across any, I'm a fractional CTO, but you could apply the same things. Like every stage has certain problems. And that's, odds are you've solved them at least once, maybe a few times across companies. And those are the things that you can start to package up into your playbook. So the kind of like MVP of the market messenger is like an optimized profile. A lot of people like think they need a fancy website. Truthfully, I've never had a website for my fractional CTO services, never in 5 years. I've just had an optimized profile. I've consistently posted content, 2x minimum a week. A lot of people post like once on LinkedIn and they'll be like, crickets, I hate this, and then go back to what they were doing before. And you do hear crickets for a while, but you have to feed the beast, so to speak. Like you have to give the algorithm content to show that you're a creator that's worth putting in front of their very precious eyeballs, right? So the social networks, if you're thinking about it, all the eyeballs that they have, all the attention they've captured, very valuable, very precious. It's just like the ads that they show to the same users. So they only want to show content that's going to be from creators that are good, first of all, second, consistent. And so you have to post consistently. And the third thing is daily outreach. And this is something like I'm going to give you a playbook of like what to say, how to do this to start your outreach plan if you want to. This is something you could do like literally right after the call today. You have to do this daily, but it doesn't have to be you. Like as I said, we have virtual assistants that like run my profile. Like here's the thing on the left or on this list here, once you optimize the profile, it's done. But the content and the outreach can be a grind over years. I don't do any of it anymore. I just have use our tech leader system to do all the content creation, all the outreach, and I then just focus on clients and converting those clients. So don't be overwhelmed by the perception of like having to do the daily grind because there's affordable options to outsource that. But the fact is, it has to get done by someone in your business.
Todd, could you double click on the 2 times weekly content? I've heard a
Yeah,
lot about adding a visual, adding carousels, adding videos.
yeah. It
Any
it's always changing and I'm always experimenting. So over time it's definitely changed over years. I've been posting consistently on LinkedIn since about 2022. And yeah, it's always been moving. But I think that's one thing. That's why I've like delegated this in a lot of ways, to be quite honest. I learned what worked from a strategic perspective from my coaches. And then we have an in-house marketer at Tech Leaders. Her name is Amelia, and she's amazing. She's basically systematized that strategy with the team of VAs that it's some of it's automated. There's a human in the loop, so some of it is AI generated. But I'll tell you this, since I stopped creating my own content, I actually get more compliments on the content. And at first I was kind of salty about that. I was like, oh, that kind of hurts my feelings. But it's better. And people they can't tell that it's not me. It's in my voice. It's just better. And so I trust her to really come up with the latest format, and she stays up on what's working. And so I would say like carousels are working very well. Short form content on LinkedIn, every channel has its own, right? And so if you're talking LinkedIn, video, they're pushing hard because they're trying to compete with TikTok and Reels. So probably the number one thing if you just want to stand out is video right now, short form video. Carousels are also working very well on Instagram, ironically, not short form Reels. If you want to go on Instagram, what's working best? It's carousel. So you really have to understand like what channel you're focusing on, and you should only be on the channel that makes sense for your ICP where they're hanging out. And so I would not start with multi-channel. That's another thing. A lot of people get overwhelmed with like, I'm going to create all this content, I'm going to repurpose it, and I'm going to be a media company overnight, and it becomes overwhelming. And your goal should be to like kind of wake up, try to create some content right away. It doesn't have to be world changing either. That's the other thing is a lot of people think like, oh, I need to be a thought leader every day or I need to be a thought leader 2 times a week. You just need to be seen 2 times a week. That's really what it's about. And so every Friday I share a meme. Sometimes it's my most most reached post. It gets the most impressions. I will just fire it off just on a whim. Like there's no thought. I have a stockpile of things I'll just pull from and be like, there, I'm gonna put that out there. Now, that might not be a part of your brand. Maybe you don't have, humor as a part of your personal brand. That's fine. I do, but like the point is it's actually content someone else created. Someone else created the meme. I'm just sharing it with my commentary. Or there might be a piece of industry news that you could share and just put your sort of 2 cents on top of it, or just simply make your market aware of it. So it doesn't always have to be like an essay. And that's, I think, another trap a lot of people get in when it comes to content.
Yeah, it sounds like what I'm hearing, if I can just imagine the visual, there's a Venn diagram. There's your ICP,
Mm.
there's the problem, that the horizontal niche on the problems that are being focused on. And then there's this channel content strategy, or there's this channel strategy
Mhm.
targeting the ICP that will support the content for the problem being solved. And in the middle is the content itself that you want to create and target 2 times a week on whatever platform, right? Or platforms, if there is more than one for the ICP.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to describe it. And I think I'm gonna have to mock up that visual now because I think that's a great way to to frame it.
There
So
you
thank you
go.
for that. Thank you. I love that's why I love like talking with different groups because I learn, in the sessions as well. So that's a great way to put it. And I would encourage you like if you want motivation, go back and look at my Facebook posts circa 2020 fall, and you'll be like, can't believe he stuck with this. I can't believe he got any business from this. it'll motivate you. And my purpose at that point was just to get comfortable hitting publish. A lot of it's like, random like bait. I was just like trying to figure out what works and what worked for me. And it was, I'm not proud of it, but I leave it up to show people to say like another, like, I don't know if you've seen this, but like Mr. Beast, you go and see his first 100 videos and they're terrible, right? And so I think there's just like, to me, something inspiring to show kind of the full journey. And so the point is to hit publish as often as you can. And again, willingness to put yourself out there. We can always improve it, right? We can always get better. And we always overthink it more. We think all of our connections are going to see it. And the fact is, a very small percentage of anyone in your audience is going to see what you put out there. And so that lowers the stakes, it lowers the risk to know that most people are not paying attention. And you have to kind of, by the time you're good, they'll be paying attention.
Jeff and Katrina want to know, do you use a company profile on LinkedIn or your personal profile?
Great question. Personal only. The reason is company profile kind of gets a black hole unless you put ad spend behind it. It's Facebook's the same way. They don't want to give any traction to any company business profiles unless you're paying. But the cool thing is like if you look at the tech leaders company profile, you can use them in tandem. So I repost a lot of my personal stuff through the tech leaders company page. We grow our following of that page. So it's not that we don't use it, but the primary publishing channel is the personal page. Me and my co-founder and other partners in the business. And then you can still do boosted ads, and that's a whole other session if anyone's interested in that, is like how to do actual lead gen on LinkedIn that works. Um, we've gone down that road extensively, but um, you want to go personal, but you can use the business profile to boost ads or boost posts as an ad if you want to. So um, personal is the answer.
And Solana wants to know what components make a profile truly optimized for positioning.
Oh, great question. That's one of the things that we have in our playbook. You know what, I could put that in just as a bonus. I know I'm going to send up an email afterwards, just to kind of link to the playbook, and I'm happy to throw that in there. I don't there. I'd rather send that as a follow-up than to try to fit that in here because there's kind of a lot to it, and but there is a process. There's a method to that madness. So I'll just include that in the follow-up email if that's okay.
Then I have a question as well. Where does commentating on other thought leaders who might have a much bigger audience
Yeah.
play into weekly content?
I think a great place to start, I followed the Gary V add your 2 cents to 9 posts. It was like 18 cents a day is all it costs, to get seen. And it's like a great way to like get out there, get comfortable. Add your 2 cents to 9 posts a day. But very rarely will that lead to big like growth of your followers, or it's more just a like to show the algorithm you engage. You're not just a content farm. It's more of a like being a good citizen, and it does grow your reputation. But it's not going to be like the silver bullet to like how you get clients. It's a great question. Okay. So the result when you do this, when you have all this set up, is that you basically have when people ask, what is it that you do and how do you get clients? I try to sum it up this way simply. It's a warm inbound and outbound content marketing system. So you can see this is super flexible. We're talking today about selling expertise, and that's what the details are really focused about. But uh, I'm using the same system actually to generate leads for one of my software startups called Acre Hedge. So it's purely like a SaaS. It's a financial SaaS for farmers, very specific niche, but using the same system. So you can sell any kind of product, right? If it's expertise, I'm using it to sell training courses, right? And info products. You can use it to sell lots of different things. And I think like content marketing is where all marketing is going. If you just think about kind of and what's going on online, it's like to me, all I care about is investing in better content marketing systems for warm inbound, outbound. Like to me, that is like kind of the most valuable asset an individual can have and a business can have. So let's talk about the third step, about offer, right? So this is the third step of like, okay, I know how to find the people I want to talk to. I've got my profile optimized that stands out and resonates with them. What am I actually selling? This is like, okay, if I'm not selling my time, what the heck am I selling? So what do you actually sell and how do you package it? But before we get into this is going to be a little bit more hands-on here. I want to talk about the big mistakes here is just simply underpricing. A lot of people just think about their salary and then just try to do some back of the napkin math on hours and then add a little bit of margin and then think that that's good. But we actually are proponents of value-based pricing. So how do you take the value of the outcome that your offer creates, reverse engineer that to 10%, and then charge that? And there's leeway there. You can charge more than that. It's almost a performance-based compensation, which the marketing world is actually, they love. Like traditionally the marketing space is all about performance compensation. Not exclusively, but it's a big component of it. And so it's all about how do we align incentives and then maximize the point at the same time. And now you can see how you start to really detach from the salary bands of the job market, and you can start to scale. And how do you have a team that helps you deliver so you can stay at the right strategic level, not sacrifice quality, but again, take on more and more and more. So the other big mistake is focusing on the how. And it's so hard when we're good at what we do, we know how to do things, to not focus on the details of the how. And it's actually more important to focus on the what and the why. Like the how is almost incidental. Like typically the clients don't even care. Um, like I don't know that any of my clients even know what tech stack the app is built in. But that's like a common question in the job market, right? Like they don't care. They just care that the outcome happens and it is happening. So stop focusing on the how. And we're going to talk about how to avoid that. This is like the visual model. It's crude. I'm not a designer, so forgive me, but let's try to make sense of this together because this is really powerful when you apply it. So at the middle here is your outcome. And this is like what you were saying earlier, Kim, around how do you have the quantifiable and the quantifiable and the qualitative metrics of the outcome. So, for my clients, when I was doing more fractional CTO work, it was like our outcome is that we're going to have an MVP that is monetizable, that will demonstrate revenue growth, milestones for the next round of investment. And we would detail what that exactly is, what the numbers are precisely. But you notice it wasn't like we're going to build you an app. We're going to, build a AI chatbot, like yes, there are details within that, but it was focused on the outcome. Or it wasn't, I'm going to sell you an engineering team, right? That would be selling a resource. It was, again, the outcome, not the resource. So you want to be thinking about what's the big outcome that you have. So that's in the middle. These pillars are like kind of your beliefs. This is a way to hang your philosophy into, and typically it's like for me, people, product, and process. Those are my pillars, right? Is that we're going to need the right people, we're going to need to build the right product, and we're going to need to have the right processes to be able to create that outcome that I mentioned. So what are your pillars? These are just kind of things that we use in the marketing. Now, what are the big problems or risks or mistakes that your ICP makes, or potentially other people that do something similar? Odds are you've got a very sharp perspective and a sharp point of view around how things should be done. This is where you really want to let that opinion shine. What are the problems? What are the mistakes? And then what are the actual solutions? Okay. And then lastly is your how, the actual playbook. Okay. And you might have multiple components of this, but this is like what you actually know how to do. And this is usually when people struggle at doing what we've talked about today, it's because they're pushing their playbook on the market. They're just talking about their playbook and nobody cares. Nobody can even understand it usually because it's so detailed and so good that it's at such a level of detail that nobody's even reading it or understanding it. And so that's why you have to take it up a notch and talk about what is the market understanding and what are they thinking about it every day. They're thinking about the problem, they're thinking about the various outcome they're trying to achieve. And then when you catch their attention with those things, they will press you on, well, how do you actually do that? And that's when you talk about your playbook and your how. Because now they're leaning in and they're like, I think you can help. How does it actually work? So you see how you kind of do it in reverse. Most people are talking about the how, talking about the playbook, and then trying to get, converge on the outcome after they've got people interested. And it very rarely works that way. So I'm curious, like, does this spark anything for anyone, like how they would think about structuring their offer in a similar way? Like any questions about how to think about the outcome or the pillars or the problem solution of the playbook?
When we give people a second to think about any questions or comments, Steve has a question. In your content marketing, do you focus on AIO or SEO given AI revolution?
We're doing a little bit more on AIO, but honestly, it's mostly just SEO. Like we actually use an amazing tool if you want to check this out. AI SEO bot is what it's called. AI SEO bot. We use this for and now it account a year after you started using it, it accounts for like 40% of our traffic, and it's completely autopilot. It researches all the keywords. It writes the blog post, researches it, publishes it. And then I just look at Google Analytics every month and I see what posts are hitting the most. And then Amelia takes that as market signal. That's actually market-driven content, right? It's what people are actively searching for. And then she rolls that into the content strategy for the next month. So I love that blog tool. And we're exploring AIO, but it's still kind of an emergent field. And so there's not a lot of like best practices yet, but we're actively practicing it and like learning about it. But I just wanted to call out like that tool for SEO is amazing. I have no plans to stop that. So SEO is in no way dead yet. Great question. The offer oftentimes is where people need to spend the most time. So if this feels a bit confusing or overwhelming or like, what? That's okay. I want to at least reveal that as like where this goes, but this is like a big part of what we help people with in the Tech Leaders program. So this is why like I help people because it's hard to do on your own. What I wanted to go here is show you all something you could use to get started, the 10 before 10 playbook. And there's a quick video of kind of how to use this, but the goal is like this is the simplest thing you could do to like start building some heat around this and get some momentum. You build a case study. I've got a little GPT to help you write a quick case study. Here's some quick guidance on how to build a lead list for LinkedIn to start sending some new connections. And then here's a quick outreach message to just start sending. So this would be like a cold strategy to start reaching out to new connections. Not completely cold, a little bit warm because they've accepted your request. But this is a great place to get started. And this is something like, we still follow this for tech leaders. It's a place to start, but it's like you never stop doing this to some degree. This is kind of like the starter playbook, and it still works, no matter where you're at in the growth phase. So check that out, and I'll make sure and have that link in the follow-up email. But feel free if you want to like pull that up now, you can. And then, lastly, I guess I'll just say like if this is something that you feel like you want help with or you're curious, it seems like it might be something you want help with. That's what we do at Tech Leaders. So I mentioned Amelia, I mentioned Steven. We've got a whole team of people. It's not just me at this point. It's actually like bigger than me. People are sharing things in the group, just a lot like you do in Sidebar, helping each other. And so, we've worked with leaders from all kinds of companies. And if this is something that you're interested in, feel free to take a look at that page here. And I'd love to talk if anybody has questions or wants to see if it might be a good fit for you. But that is essentially what I've got for today. And I want to stop. I know there's like a couple minutes left. I don't know if there's time for questions. I know Kim, you want to share your screen as well. So I'm just
I
going to
do.
stop because I've said a lot.
So I'm going to, if you wouldn't mind, stop sharing. There's a question from Jeremy, and the QR code campaign is disabled, Kunal
Thank
says.
you. Let me just pull this up.
Yeah, so you might want to
Okay.
do that
I'll just
before
drop the
we.
link in there if you want to see that directly. Thanks for the heads up. I'm not sure why that is, but I'll fix that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Todd. And if you wouldn't mind, I'll share my screen. For those of you that are still on the call, we would really appreciate it if you could just complete a survey for today's session. I've also dropped the link in the chat as well. So we've got Todd's link to the Tech Leaders 10 before 10, today's session survey link, and I'm going to share my screen in just a second. Let's see here. And then also we've got Jeremy that has a question. How do you select the outcomes to work back from? If you could answer that in 3-ish minutes.
Yeah, it's like you want to think about what are the biggest and most valuable thing that you've done in your career. And I know that's like kind of a non-answer, but this is such a reflective thing. It's not something that I can prescribe. But if do go on a little, vision quest for the afternoon, get some clear your calendar or something and just journal down what have you done? What are some of the biggest outcomes, maybe feedback you got? And you just kind of need to do a mental inventory of what you've done. And, it might be helpful to maybe do this with a partner and to just spark ideas and maybe share what you did, maybe even a previous colleague. Um, it's worth being really thorough on that. And a lot of times we overlook the things that are valuable. Like actually one of the most valuable things that I provide for my clients is actually just allowing them to put my face and credibility on their pitch deck. It costs me nothing, but it actually helps them a lot. And that's something like I never highlighted, but realized later than I probably should have that like that was really valuable because it added that they had a technical person on board that gave the confidence for the investor to actually cut the check. So it's like I lend that out and it's incredibly valuable and cost me nothing. So that's an example of like things that might be valuable that you're sitting on and you might not realize it.
Awesome.
Great.
Katrina liked that suggestion.
Awesome. Thanks, Katrina.
Also, another thought that I had is I've kept a like go me self promotion like yay file for a couple of years, and I'm realizing that's my source for the
Yes.
outcomes.
Great idea. I call it a brag rag. It's like, what's the thing that you
Yes.
read when you wake up that gets you fired up, or you have that hard day where it was, tough conversations or tough meetings. I have mine. I actually read that every day. It's a part of my kind of morning routine to like gear myself up to remind myself. Because the truth is, I talked about all the good stuff today, but like it's harder when you're out on your own, right? You don't have the bumper pad, so to speak, of a corporation and a bigger company. So you have to have that fuel, right? And I think that's a great thing to have, Kim. I use it myself and always recommend it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Todd. A lot of
Thank you.
comments coming in, thanking you, enjoying this, appreciating your content. Just a great pleasure to have you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us in today's session at Sidebar. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Definitely feel free to connect with Todd as well and tech leaders and continue to engage with them because, Todd, I know you've taught or you've shared a lot of value today. So thank you so much for that.
Hey, thank you for coming, and I really appreciate the invitation to do this.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Bye all.
Bye.